Today we're looking at the Industrial Revolution. And the Industrial Revolution refers to this period during the modern era where we see a growth of machines and factories that starts in Europe and gradually spreads to other parts of the world as well. So the Industrial Revolution begins in Britain, and Britain had several advantages, and that's really the big reason why it starts in Britain. And those advantages included an abundant supply of coal and a supply of coal that they actually had access to. They also had access to the sea, and that's going to allow them to bring in raw materials and export finished products. They also had a large population, and you need a large population to provide labor in order to industrialize. And then they also had money. And the two key things you need to industrialize are money and people. And so Britain had all of these things. And then as Britain took over territory around the globe, these colonies provided raw materials to feed their factories. And so from the Americas, they imported things like cotton and sugar. And later, as they gained control of India, India is going to provide a ton of cotton to British factories. And then not only could these colonies provide raw materials, but they also became markets where they could sell their finished manufactured goods back to their colonies. And so that's why the Industrial Revolution started in Britain. So the Industrial Revolution begins small, and it begins with the textile industry. And so what basically happened is, as the population continued to grow, women weaving textiles from their home, which was a typical way of producing textiles, could not keep pace with the growing population. And so it's this demand for more textiles, more clothing, that's really going to fuel the entire Industrial Revolution. So they had to come up with ways to produce clothing faster. And so it starts simple. John Kay is going to invent a simple machine. It was basically a block of wood on wheels that kind of shot back and forth, called the flying shuttle. Later, that's going to be improved to invent the spinning mule. And the spinning mule could produce about 100 times more than a manual spinning wheel that was kept in the home. And then gradually, these machines are going to become powered by first water. And so a water-powered loom is going to be created by Edmund Cartwright. And now with these water-powered machines, I could hire one boy who could oversee two of these machines at a time, and that one boy could produce 15 times more cloth than a woman weaving at home. And so gradually, these machines become more efficient and are able to produce far more than the old system of producing at home. So the first machines that were developed were mostly powered by either water or wind. The problem with that is that they were unreliable. If the wind wasn't blowing that day, well, you couldn't produce much. Same thing, if the water wasn't flowing swiftly enough that day, your factory wasn't producing much. So James Watt is going to invent the steam engine. And the steam engine burned coal, which drove pistons, which was used to turn a wheel that could run these machines. And so now with steam-powered machines, I could build my factories anywhere I wanted them to be. They didn't have to be located next to rivers anymore. And it created far more efficient machines. I didn't have to rely on water and wind power anymore. So what we see throughout this Industrial Revolution is that as one industry grows, it often helps many other industries grow as well. And so that's what's going to happen with the iron and steel industry. As machines spread, as factories spread, as railroads spread, the demand for iron and steel is going to increase greatly. And the old methods of producing steel weren't fast enough. And so Henry Bessemer is going to develop a new process that could produce a faster, stronger, but more flexible version of steel than what could be produced before. And so using this Bessemer process, now we could produce enough iron and steel to meet the growing demand. We're also going to see huge improvements in transportation, and that really starts with the railroad. So George Stephenson is going to invent the first steam-powered locomotive. This was part of a contest that was held to see who could create the best steam-powered device, and he comes up with this railroad. And soon after, his idea starts to spread. And with the spread of railroads, well, that's going to fuel the iron and steel industries. And steamships are going to be developed. And steamships could travel places that sailing vessels couldn't. They didn't have to rely on the wind anymore. And so railroads and steamships are going to help every other industry, because now I can get my raw materials into my factories cheaper and faster, and I can get my finished products out much faster as well. And so railroads and steamships are going to help every other industry. And as my railroads grow, my iron and steel industries grew as well.